Hello everybody, my name is Jan Werle, I'm a Dutch Grandmaster, and on this DVD I would like to show you all the ins and outs of the Rossolimo variation in the Sicilian. The Rossolimo variation starts with 2 knight c6 and then bishop b5. Of course the main move here of the Sicilian starts with c takes d4, knight takes d4 and knight c3. But we can't consider bishop b5 as a sideline in the Sicilian. It has a lot of followers, amongst them also all the world-class players are playing it. In 2018 during the World Championship it was used, this line, by Fabiano Caruana in his match against Magnus Carlsen. And the resulting lines are quite sharp, so it's not a positional quiet sideline, no. It's really relevant these days, and therefore it's also important that you know what is going on. In another DVD I'm going to cover of d6, and here this is called the Moscow variation of the Sicilian. Black has many ways to play. Bishop d7, he can play also knight d7 or knight c6 and so on. And on an extra 60 minutes coverage, I will also look at all the other possible replies for black, such as e6 and a6 and so on. So I will try to provide you with a complete repertoire in the entire Sicilian. But here on this DVD we start with knight c6, bishop b5, and there are two main moves for black to play. These are g6 and also e6. But they're also all kind of forgotten sidelines, and of course you shouldn't be surprised in the opening. Therefore it's also important that you know all these sidelines, such as queen c7 and knight f6 and so on. To start with one of the main lines besides g6, black wants to play knight ge7, cover the knight, and white is giving up the bishop and delivering black double pawn. And this is advantageous, of course, to white, because the black's pawn structure is damaged. He has two double pawns. But the disadvantage is that black obtains the bishop pair, two strong bishops, possibly. At the moment, white will try to do everything not to allow this bishop on c8 to become active, that black can enjoy his bishop pair. And for the moment, the bishop finds it hard to become active, this bishop on c8, because if he goes to b7, it will be blocked by the c6 pawn. And you see also the d7 and e6 pawn stand in their way. So what white is doing is that he's building kind of a wall on the white squares, such as c4, d3, in order to limit the scope of the black bishop on c8 even further. In this particular line, after bishop c6, bc6, white can play d3, knight e7 is the main line, and here h4. And the idea behind h4 is that black, of course, has a lack of development and wants to find a good spot for the knight. He doesn't choose f6, it's at least not the main line, because it can be harassed by a move like e5. And he wants to find a safe spot on g6. Well, that's the reason actually that white plays h4, and if black doesn't react with h5, then the black knight can't really go to g6, the only available square, because it will be harassed by h5. Worth mentioning is that, for example, d6, then h5, where should the black knight go to? e5 is possible. This has been played a couple of times by also strong players, but now h6, and white tries to open the h-file, castle long, and he's better. So the main move is h5, and now e5 is often played f6 and knight bd2, but white can also try to play queen e2. This kind of position is knight g6 and queen e4. And black plays often king f7. But instead of queen e2, white can play knight bd2. And here this kind of position is after f takes e5. I would like to recommend a gambit for white by playing knight c4, giving up a pawn. And there are all kind of active ideas in this typical line here. White is enjoying a lead in development, and that's why he wants to exploit this. And this is an interesting, very interesting gambit. After a3, b4, he's going to attack this mess of pawns in the center from black, trying to, the a file will be opened, and he gets very active play. And yes, black has control over the center, that's true, but the bishop on c8 is doing nothing, and white has a nice bishop on g5, he's controlling this square, and will get very serious and active play. Another way to go is after knight bd2 is knight g6, then queen e2, then we get in our main line. White can also start with queen e2, then d6, e takes d6, this happened in the game Motolev against Tukayev, and then queen d6. And this is happening more often in practice. Lately in a game between Anish Giri against Carlsen, also Carlsen went for this setup. Black will place his pawn eventually on e5. And so he puts his pawns on the black colors. That's limiting the scope of this bishop. And he is increasing the scope of his own bishop by placing the pawns on black squares. That's the idea behind this whole setup. This is also a very typical idea and one to remember. Knight f8 and knight e6 and so on. Okay, so far so good regarding the e6 line. Now we quickly go to this introduction video to g6, and white can play here short castling, bishop g7, and the main line which is played these days is always bishop takes c6, and black can play take back with b takes c6, d takes c6. In this video I try to only give you some general ideas and the most relevant games between world-class players, so that you have in mind what is going on here for your general understanding. But for concrete play for your games, I would like to suggest that you play c3. This is kind of a sideline, but I expect it is going to be popular soon. And white is immediately, is first of all, of course, avoiding all the main lines, but he is trying to get influence, bigger influence in the center right away. And first of all, black can try to avoid that white plays d4, but white will and will sacrifice a pawn by doing so. Another way is knight f6, and now white plays rook e1, short castling. And now d4. So black has to react here in the center by playing d5. We play e5 and knight e4. And it's a forgotten line. It's not often played, but that's very good for us. So we are avoiding all the current theory. And we're very unpredictable for the opponent. And we play here bishop e3. And this is a key move. And we're overprotecting according to the principles of Aaron Nimzowitsch. We're overprotecting the pawn on d4, preparing for knight d2, and we're willing to give up our bishop for the knight on c6 when black plays queen b6. So then bishop takes c6, b takes c6, sorry, I'm going too fast. So bishop takes c6, b takes c6, and queen c1 is a very nice move. And first of all, protecting the pawn on b2, but white has serious attacking ideas. And at first impression, it might not look too impressive, but in this position, knight c3, it's very likely that you get such a kind of position on the board. Black finds it very hard to react. First of all, he has to deal with this positional threat of knight a4, c5 when his pawn becomes weak. So he has to play a5, a4, and white plays rook a c1, rook fb8. So everything looks fine for black, but our idea in these kind of positions is that we play f3 And then the bishop on f5 doesn't have any squares. First, of course, white plays knight d1. So white is going to play f3 and then g4. And the black bishop has to go back and doesn't have a good square. And furthermore, he has the other bishop on g7. It's looking towards this pawn, is doing nothing. The only way to develop this bishop is to play e6. Well, after f3, that's not possible because the bishop will be trapped. So if the bishop goes back to d7, we can start an attack. For example, with h4, h5, we try to swap the bishops, and we steer at the due moment, we steer the knight into towards the enemy king. And that provides us with serious attacking chances. So very promising and unexpectedly good position is what we get. So after bishop e3, black is not, he doesn't have to play queen b6, but he can play as well c takes d4. Then c takes d4 and queen b6 is a possible way to go on. And now, once again, we give up a bishop pair. And after queen takes c6, there's another plan in b takes c6, which also will be covered. White will play knight fd2. So take, queen takes d2, and the aforementioned ideas also apply here. We place our knight, though, on c3. And black has problems with finding good squares for his bishops. On f5 we will play again f3 and g4. At some point we open the h-file. We can use the h-file also for a rook, and we launch an attack on black's enemy king. So quite promising play, and I'm happy to introduce you to a lot of new ideas in this opening in order to surprise your opponent and to get a nice opening advantage. I hope you will enjoy also this video like I did in my preparatory work. And now we move forward to the first chapter.